call came in just after midnight, a frantic voice barely able to get the words out. Officers were dispatched to a rural property on the outskirts of town, where neighbors reported hearing blood-curdling screams and a struggle. When the first unit arrived, the scene looked exactly like what the dispatcher had feared. A man, found partially mauled in his backyard, torn clothes and deep gashes across his body. Initial thoughts were clear. The area was known for occasional wild animal encounters. Bears, mountain lions, nothing unusual for the remote woodlands surrounding the neighborhood. But as the officers assessed the victim and the crime scene, subtle details began to unsettle even the most seasoned among them. The man, a local handyman named Carl, was conscious but barely responsive, his breath shallow and ragged. His wounds, while consistent with animal claws, seemed oddly arranged, almost deliberate. There was an unnatural pattern to the slashes, deep marks running parallel in straight lines, unlike typical animal scratches that tend to be chaotic and random. His fingers, crushed and bent backward, suggested a violent struggle, but in a way that defied logic for an animal attack. Nearby, a blood trail led from the yard to the edge of the forest, but what caught the officer's attention was the absence of animal tracks. No paw prints, no claw marks in the dirt or mud, nothing to confirm that a wild creature had been involved. The only tracks were human footprints, some appearing fresh, others smeared as if the person had been dragged or had struggled against a hard surface. Medical personnel were quick to transport Carl to the hospital, where he would later report something chilling, something he barely had the strength to speak aloud. He said it wasn't an animal. He said it was something else, something human but not human. The investigation deepened. The local police began combing the property, interviewing neighbors, and analyzing evidence. Surveillance cameras from nearby homes showed nothing unusual. No prowlers, no wild animals crossing the roads that night. Even the motion sensors installed around the victim's property had not triggered. But the story was far from over. Carl, in the days following the attack, exhibited strange symptoms. Not just physical injuries, but behavioral changes. He grew withdrawn, often staring at the shadows with wide, unblinking eyes. His voice lowered to a rasp as he whispered warnings about something lurking in the woods, something watching and waiting. Officers assigned to the case began experiencing their own encounters. One night, the patrol officer guarding the area reported hearing guttural breathing from the tree line. Another swore he saw a figure darting just beyond the tree line, too tall and too quick for any known animal in the region. Their radios would occasionally crackle with static, punctuated by distant, unidentifiable noises. A growl, a low moan, or sometimes silence so thick it felt suffocating. A deeper dive into the victim's background revealed no history of disputes, no enemies who would want him harm, and no known reasons for a human assailant to inflict such brutality. Carl was quiet, respected, and kept mostly to himself. The forensic analysis returned inconclusive results. The wounds had characteristics of animal bites and scratches, but the bite marks were too evenly spaced, too symmetrical to be from any local predator. Tests on hair samples found at the scene showed strands that did not match any known animal or human DNA. The case began to chill the officers assigned to it. One detective, reviewing the evidence late at night, noticed a recurring detail in Carl's account. A phrase he repeated again and again. The eyes that never blinked. The victim described the creature as having large, glowing eyes that seemed to pierce through the darkness, reflecting a cold intelligence, not the wild instinct of an animal. Rumors began to swirl among the department. Stories of a creature said to roam the deep woods, a legend dismissed by most but whispered about among older officers. Some called it the Watcher, a being believed to hunt silently, feeding not just on flesh but on fear itself. Weeks after Carl's attack, officers investigating the area found strange symbols carved into the trees around his property. The markings were crude but unnerving. Geometric shapes intertwined with strange glyphs, unlike anything the local tribes or communities had ever used. A final, unsettling discovery was made during a late-night stakeout near the woods. An officer caught a fleeting glimpse of a tall, gaunt figure slipping between the trees, its eyes glowing faintly under the moonlight. When pursued, it vanished without a trace, leaving behind an oppressive silence. The official report remained unchanged, an animal attack. But whispers among the officers told a different story. They said it was an animal attack, but those who were there knew the truth. Sometimes, the things lurking in the dark are neither beast nor man, but something far older and far more terrifying. And in those woods, beneath the indifferent stars, something watches, waits, and remembers. They say every photo tells a story, but some pictures hold secrets best left buried. A few years ago, Detective Mark Reynolds was handed an old case file that had been quietly archived for decades. It was labeled Cold Case Number 423, Unidentified Suspect. The case itself was straightforward, a string of burglaries in a sleepy town that had never been solved. What caught Mark's attention wasn't the crime or the missing evidence, but a single photograph, a mugshot. The mugshot was grainy, black and white, the kind taken before digital cameras. It showed a man with a blank expression, eyes staring directly into the lens. Nothing unusual until Mark noticed something strange. This man's face didn't appear in any police records. No name, no date of birth, no file number, nothing. Curious, Mark asked around. The old-timers in the precinct had no memory of the man. The file had been opened and closed so long ago, the suspect was practically a ghost. Yet the mugshot was there, perfectly preserved. Digging deeper, Mark found the original arrest report. It detailed the capture of a suspect fitting the description, but the name was redacted. The case notes mentioned unusual behavior and non-compliance, but gave no further explanation. The officer who made the arrest had died years earlier, under mysterious circumstances. When Mark examined the mugshot closely under different light, he swore he saw something flicker in the man's eyes, like they were moving, shifting just beneath the surface. It was subtle but undeniably there. He decided to run the photo through facial recognition software, hoping to find a match in national databases. But the software returned 0 results. It was as if the man had never existed. Then, strange things began happening. Late one night, while reviewing the file at the station, Mark's computer glitched. The mugshot on screen flickered, momentarily replaced by a different face, distorted, almost shadow-like, before snapping back to the original. Unsettled, Mark turned off the monitor, but the feeling of being watched lingered. Over the next few days, reports started pouring in from officers on patrol. They spoke of seeing a man matching the mugshot's description, always at the edge of their vision, vanishing when approached. One officer swore he saw the figure standing near an abandoned warehouse where many of the burglaries had occurred. But when backup arrived, no one was there. The most chilling incident happened during a routine evidence review. Mark was cataloging old mugshots for digitization when the image of the phantom suspect appeared on his screen. Except this time, the photo was in color, sharp and vivid. The man's eyes locked with his, filled with something unreadable. Suddenly, the computer shut down. When restarted, the mugshot was gone from the file. It had vanished. Desperate for answers, Mark reached out to a retired archivist who had worked in the precinct for decades. She told him about a legend among officers, a phantom mugshot said to appear on police records, representing a suspect who transcended physical form, a malevolent presence that haunted the records themselves. According to her, officers who tried to investigate the phantom too closely often faced bizarre accidents or vanished without a trace. Mark, though skeptical, found himself caught in a web of paranoia. He started hearing footsteps behind him at the station, whispers in empty corridors, and glimpses of that same blank face reflected in windows. One night, after a long shift, Mark found a new mugshot waiting for him in the file. His own face, eyes wide and terrified. The following morning, Mark was missing. His desk was empty, his computer wiped clean, and the phantom mugshot file reopened, displaying a new photograph. The phantom wasn't just a face in a photo. It was a warning, a presence that consumed those who sought the truth. And now it was hunting for its next face. The barracks bell was old, older than anyone still serving could remember. It hung in the highest tower, its iron body weathered by decades of rain, wind, and silence. It wasn't used often, only on rare, official occasions or emergencies. But every night, precisely at 3:13 a.m., the bell would toll once. Not loud, but enough to wake anyone deep in sleep. No one knew why or how. The barracks was locked down tight at night, the phone silent, and yet that bell tolled without fail. Lieutenant Harris was the first to notice. He had recently transferred to the precinct, a veteran with a steady hand but a skeptical mind. His first week was unremarkable until the third night. Just past 3, his radio crackled with static, and then that faint, singular chime from the tower. He asked the night shift what it meant. Everyone shrugged, eyes avoiding his. The sergeant muttered something about old traditions, but no one really knew. Harris decided to investigate. The next night, he stayed alert past midnight. The barracks were quiet, shadows stretching long across concrete floors. At 3:13 sharp, a chill crept through the hallway as the bell rang once, clear and somber. Harris swore he saw a shadow flicker near the tower window, but when he looked, nothing was there. Curiosity burned. Harris dove into old archives, reading faded reports and personnel logs. He found a name that stood out: Officer Daniel Crow, who had served in the 1940s. Crow was a dedicated man, known for his punctuality and strict adherence to rules. But one night in 1947, during a violent storm, Crow disappeared without a trace. The only clue was the bell, which had tolled that night, once, just as it did now. The records said the bell was rung manually back then, a warning to alert officers during emergencies. Crow was supposed to respond to a call about a disturbance near the river, but he never arrived. His body was never found, and the case went cold. That night, Harris waited near the tower, eyes fixed on the bell. At 3:13, the faint chime echoed again. As it sounded, a cold gust swept past, carrying whispers just beyond hearing. Harris felt a presence, a heavy, restless weight in the air. Suddenly, his radio crackled with static, then a voice, soft, distorted, but unmistakably a man's. "They're coming," it said, then silence. Harris spun, searching for the source, but the hall was empty. His heart pounded as the bell's echo faded into the night. Days passed, and officers reported strange occurrences. Doors slammed with no wind, footsteps echoed in empty corridors, and that single bell tolled every night at 3:13 without fail. Harris interviewed the oldest officers, learning a chilling pattern. Every time the bell tolled, an officer was called to duty and something went wrong. Some returned changed, others never returned at all. One night, Harris decided to stay in the tower itself. As the clock neared 3:13, the air grew thick, the silence oppressive. The bell tolled once, and a figure appeared, dim, flickering, like a shadow trapped between moments. It was Officer Crow, his eyes hollow, his uniform soaked in rain from decades ago. He reached out, voice barely a whisper. "The river. They never left. The ones waiting. They always come back." Harris tried to respond, but the tower door slammed shut. Darkness swallowed him as the bell rang again, deeper this time, resonating through bone and soul. The next morning, the barracks were silent. Harris was gone, leaving only his radio behind, crackling faintly with a broken voice repeating, "They're coming!" And every night since, the bell still rings at 3:13. The officers who remain avoid the tower and the bell's echo. Some say it's a warning, others a curse. The truth, like the shadow of Officer Crow, lingers in the cold air, waiting, watching, tolling in the dark. The barracks bell at 3:13 isn't just a sound. It's a summons, a reminder, and a story that refuses to be forgotten. And when the bell rings again tonight, will you listen? The case began like so many others. An armed robbery gone wrong, a desperate suspect, and a veteran officer caught in the crossfire. But what happened afterward would haunt not just the police involved, but anyone who heard the story. Officer Mark Langley was no stranger to danger. 2 decades on the force had taught him how to read the silence before the storm, how to stay calm when everything else felt chaotic. On a cold autumn night, responding to a report of a convenience store holdup, Mark's instincts kicked in immediately. As he approached the dimly lit store, he saw a man fleeing, a glint of metal in his hand. The suspect turned suddenly, firing a single shot before vanishing into the shadows. Mark felt the searing pain before the world blurred. A bullet had struck his chest. What came next defied all logic. At the hospital, doctors were baffled. Imaging showed no foreign object lodged in Mark's body. No bullet, no fragments, nothing. Yet the entry wound was undeniable. A clear puncture, bleeding heavily, yet no bullet had been found in the chest cavity or beyond. The official report listed the cause as a graze wound, a near miss, and Mark was lucky to survive. But as Mark recovered, strange things began to unfold. During his physical therapy, Mark started feeling a sharp, rhythmic thumping inside his chest, something no medical examination could explain. It wasn't a heartbeat or any normal bodily function. It was irregular, almost like a pulse of its own. His nights became restless. Sleep was interrupted by a cold sensation, like something pressing against his ribs from the inside. He swore he could feel it moving beneath his skin, slowly, deliberately. The hospital staff noticed his anxiety, chalking it up to trauma, but Mark was convinced. The bullet was still inside him, not lodged, but alive in some way. Weeks later, during a routine follow-up, Mark felt a sudden sharp pain radiate from his chest, followed by an eerie warmth. Then, without warning, his medical monitors flatlined. In the chaos that ensued, emergency responders frantically revived him. When he finally awoke, Mark's eyes were wide with terror. He recounted a vision, an overwhelming presence inside him, something ancient and restless, as if the bullet carried more than just metal, something that wanted out. The hospital decided to run exploratory surgery. The procedure was tense, the room filled with silent dread as surgeons carefully scanned his chest cavity. Then, to everyone's astonishment, they found it. A small, tarnished bullet, resting exactly where scans had shown nothing. The bullet was removed, but the nightmare was only beginning. Shortly after discharge, Mark's behavior grew erratic. Colleagues described him as distant, distracted. He spoke of shadows lurking in corners, of whispers that weren't there. The bullet, he believed, had changed him. One night, on a patrol alone, Mark responded to a domestic disturbance call. As he entered the house, the air grew thick and cold. Suddenly, his flashlight flickered, and a whisper echoed through the walls. His own voice, distorted and hollow. His heart pounded, but the pulse inside his chest was different now. Faster, like a second heartbeat. Mark called for backup, but no one answered. Radio static filled the channel, punctuated by faint, indecipherable murmurs. Panicked, he retreated outside, and saw, standing at the edge of the yard, a figure shrouded in darkness. It was not human, yet it wore his face. The apparition reached out with a skeletal hand. Mark tried to run, but his legs felt rooted. The figure stepped closer, revealing eyes like black voids. Suddenly, the bullet inside him felt like it was burning, sending waves of searing pain through his chest. Mark collapsed, clutching his wound. The next morning, officers found Mark unconscious near the scene, his jacket torn and scorched. But when they checked his vitals, his chest showed no sign of injury. The bullet was gone, vanished. Mark never fully recovered. Haunted by the experience, he requested a transfer and eventually retired early. Yet he carried with him a secret fear that the bullet was not just a piece of metal, but a vessel for something darker, something that still lingered inside him, unseen and waiting. What truly unsettles in this story is not the bullet itself, but the unsettling question it leaves behind. Can a single wound harbor a presence? Can an object pierce not only flesh but reality? Mark's case challenges everything we understand about trauma and survival. It forces us to wonder if sometimes what we carry inside is far more than what meets the eye. The bullet that showed up in his chest and then vanished remains a chilling mystery, a reminder that some injuries leave scars not only on the body, but on the soul itself.